All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Overcome and Become podcast. As always, with my co-host Humberto Kaufman and special guest today, IFBB Pro Cody Drobot. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing good, fellas. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. Cody, I guess a lot of people are really looking forward to seeing you step on stage for the first time in the Pro League. Obviously, there's probably a lot of hype behind it, especially with the COVID year, a lot of shows getting canceled. And I believe you won your pro card at 2019 Vancouver Pro, right?
Yes, that is correct. That was my my return year to bodybuilding. I'd competed in Classic for the last 2 to 3 years prior before that, and then made the switch back to bodybuilding just because I just felt it was a better fit for me.
Fair enough, man. I gotta ask, like, how many shots at a pro qualifier did it take before you finally got it?
I've been competing at pro qualifiers since 2015, I guess, since I was a junior. My last year of juniors there was 2015, where top 3 junior class was Regan Grimes, Christopher Bumstead, and myself. And that was my last year of bodybuilding, actually. And then 2016, as you guys know, the Classic division came out. And at the time, I believe I was much lighter than I am now, obviously. My weight, I was competing as a light middleweight. I don't even think they have the light middleweight class anymore at the national level, but I was competing as a light middleweight at about 173 pounds, which was also the height and weight requirement for my height in Classic. So then that's why I decided to try my hand in Classic, and I competed in Classic 2016, 17, 18, and then, as you know, switched to bodybuilding 2019.
I actually had the Byron. I had the pleasure of stepping on stage with you. Actually,
yes,
I remember. You remember that?
That was here in Edmonton.
It was 2017. That was the last nationals prior to the CPA coming into fruition. It was in Edmonton, I think it was.
Yeah, I believe you were working with Dura at the time, weren't you?
I was, yeah. Do you coach yourself that year, or were you working with someone?
Nah, so no, I would have been with Mr. Dustin Cosman that year.
Yeah, it was. From what I remember, you going into that show, you had a hard time, I guess, finding that balance because you were limited by that cap. I think previously the criticism for your physique was that you needed to bring up your lower body, quad specifically, I think.
Legs in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember you had pretty good hamstrings, actually. Your side chest, the hamstrings were well developed. It was the quads, I think, mostly that.
Yeah, definitely quads, but overall leg development in general, is where I really needed to improve on. But as you just mentioned, I was heavily restricted by that weight cap, so it was a little bit hard without taking away and killing muscle from other areas to put on the tissue that I needed to actually have a balanced, proportioned physique.
Would you say that was the main reason for you to make the switch back from Classic to bodybuilding?
Absolutely. Yeah. For me to, I realized for me to reach my full potential, I needed to switch back to the bodybuilding division. And that's not a knock on the Classic division. Obviously, the Classic division's great. It's brought a lot of new fans to the sport. It's the division is thriving, but just for me and my body type, in order for me to reach my full potential, I needed to put on some extra weight.
So what would be the difference, I guess, now training with Neil Yoda Hill? Could you explain some of like his training, for example? Like we were talking before you jumped on the podcast, he kind of has different methods. I'm just curious what your take is on it.
Yeah, so he developed his Y3T training discipline. So I have basically 3 weeks of training that I rotate through. Each week is different, whether it be my eccentric movements are slower. I have a high volume week, and then I kind of like have a deload week in a sense. But with his training program, I'm definitely making sure I'm hitting, attacking those fast twitch muscle fibers as well as slow twitch muscle fibers, and just keeping things moving every week. Nothing's ever really the same with his training. Like we have my exercises are the same in those 3 weeks, not week to week, but that like 3-week rotation is what I follow. But it definitely keeps your body guessing.
So when it came to once you decided to move to bodybuilding, was there anything specific that you changed in your training to bring up your weaker parts, perhaps the lower body? Was there anything that that you learned from perhaps this new style of training that contributed? Because I gotta say, the change that you were able to make from 2018 to that entire off season, all the way leading up to the Vancouver Pro Qualifier, your lower body it just exploded. It was just something really, really amazing to watch that transformation. So I'm really curious to see what was it primarily the fact that you were just allowed to be heavier, or did you actually were perhaps a little bit more strategic when it came to your training?
To be honest, I think it was just more so that I had that room to grow. I was able to eat more. I think food was the biggest factor in making those improvements to my lower body. Was definitely the food. My training never really switched up too drastically, to be honest, because I competed in classic under the guidance of Neil as well. So when I made the transition from classic to bodybuilding, I was being coached by Neil. So the training didn't really change too much. It was more so the food and that allowance, that it was like the shackles were taken off and I could really grow into myself.
Just really push the food to actually put the size on.
Yeah, like as much as I would love to say that we came up with some extravagant secret training philosophy, I would say it was the food really that allowed me to make those gains.
I'm glad you said that, because the biggest thing, especially that new competitors or new people that get into fitness,
they want the secret.
Is that they want the secret. they think there's some magic formula, some special drug cycle that's going to help them pack on pounds and pounds of muscle. It's really just the training and food.
Yeah, spoiler alert, guys. It's simple. Bodybuilding, when you break it down, bodybuilding is actually very simple. It's I know sounds incredibly cliche. You always hear consistency is key, but there is no truer statement. Consistency really is key.
And it really shows who is consistent at the end of the day, right?
Absolutely.
Cody, so one of the biggest questions I got from people, and I got it from multiple, multiple national level competitors who just want to know, can you describe what it was like when you were in the overall and they finally just said, like, your new IFBB pro, Cody Drobot? Like, what did it feel like in that moment?
Man, that's a good question. It's almost indescribable. I went into that show with zero expectations. The only expectation you could say that I had on myself was I just wanted to reestablish myself as a bodybuilder. Like I mentioned before, I hadn't stepped on stage as a bodybuilder since 2015. So now, fast forward to 2019, I'm trying my hand at bodybuilding again. I just wanted to reestablish myself as a bodybuilder. As you mentioned, I had a lot of work to do to improve my legs, my lower body. And that was something that I really wanted to make sure I had improved by the time I stepped on stage as a bodybuilder again. And so when I won the light heavyweight division, I could have went home and I would have been happy. So when it came time to go on stage for the overall, I wasn't able to go eat my meals. So I got off stage for light heavies and I wanted to go backstage to go eat so that I could be ready for the overall, but they didn't want to lose me. You know how it is backstage at shows. Sometimes it gets pretty hectic and they don't want to lose competitors that they know will be going on stage soon. Excuse me. So I had to kind of stand behind the curtain off to the side, and I had to wait for heavyweights to do their thing, their posing routines, their awards. And then I had to wait for super heavies to do their call outs, their routines, their awards. And then we went out for the overall. So I was a little bit worried that I was flattening out as I was waiting to go on stage, because I didn't have anything to tie me over essentially. But I pushed all the stress and the worry out of my mind, because as you guys know, stress and cortisol is not our friend. when we're about to go on stage. So I just had fun with it, man. And then when they called my name, it wasn't necessarily a shock, because make no mistake, I busted my ass to get there, but it was definitely a surreal moment for me. I had tears. Let's just say that I was choking back tears. So it was a very, very happy moment for me. It's like now I finished that chapter and I'm moving on to a new chapter of my bodybuilding career now.
That's amazing, and I think there's something to be said about the approach that you took for that prep, meaning you had no expectations, right? As long as you have the work ethic down to a T, and you know what it requires to bring your absolute best. I think sometimes doing it this way could potentially be beneficial, because you're not putting more pressure on yourself perhaps than if you were just focused on that overall or that pro card. And
absolutely, man. And I think a lot of people place a lot of expectations on themselves, which is obviously good. We're all competitors. I don't think anyone's getting on that stage without the intent to win. So we all want to win, obviously. But I think some people they place those heavy expectations on themselves, and it causes stress, and it's almost like it's counterproductive. So when I did that prep, man, that was honestly the funnest prep I think I've ever had. And that's saying something, because I love prepping. Off season to me is much harder than prep. I can suffer and get my weight down. Obviously I had to for classic, but the hard part for me is definitely all the eating in the off season. So off season seems more daunting and more work, if you will, whereas prep is fun for me.
So what was the weight difference between, let's say, your weight cap, because I'm assuming you were pretty close to the weight cap when you were doing classic, and your stage weight, at the 2019 bodybuilding pro qualifier?
So when I weighed in for classic, actually at the Vancouver Pro-Am in 2018, I weighed in like on 182 on the button. I think I might have been like 181.9 or something like that. My cutoff was 182. The following year as a bodybuilder, I stepped on the scale at 197. Mind you, I did have about 5 meals in me before I stepped on the scale, but it was about a 15-pound difference from stepping on the scale from classic to bodybuilding a year apart.
Now, when you compare, a prep when you were at around, final product being 182, in a prep where you put 15 pounds of muscle, would you say you felt any different throughout the process? Meaning, was there any, do you feel more tired carrying that much more muscle? Was sleep any different? Were there any differences in how you were actually going through the prep because of this increase in weight?
No, I wouldn't say so, because I'll add some clarity for everyone listening. So I stepped on the scale at 197, but like I mentioned, I had about 5 meals in me. So my true weight the following morning, after the show was done, I was awarded my pro card. My fiance and we got up the next morning, we went and did cardio, and then I came back to the house and I stepped on the scale and I was 190.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So put that into perspective, 190 pounds, my cap now as a 212 competitor is obviously 212. That leaves me about 22 pounds of true muscle to put on before I reach the ceiling of the 212 division.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy to think how much potential is there to actually continue growing and just improving overall. So that brings me to a question. Sorry?
It's exciting.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to see. Do you plan on competing this year?
See, man, I really want to. I just started checking in with Neil again. I know you guys have had it really hard out your way with lockdowns and whatnot. Same thing here. Our gyms have been closed for 6 of the past 12 months. I think you guys even longer. So for obvious reasons, that's hindered my ability to progress at an efficient rate. I've been fortunate enough. I have some buddies that have some equipment in their basements. So I've been training here and there, getting basement workouts in, but it's not the same. It's enough to keep my sanity, but it's not enough to, progress as a professional athlete at the rate that I would like to progress at. So I'm back checking in with Neil Hill, my coach. again now. So we're just going to see how these next couple months go, how my body responds. So far so good. Training is going well, my weight is coming back up. So we'll see kind of how I'm looking at the end of the year here, and then
Make a choice from
there. If we're going to pick some shows for the end of the year, he said maybe head to Europe at the end of the year, but we'll see. I was looking at maybe doing Texas and Tampa, because I know those shows will happen for sure. But I don't want to step on stage just to compete. This will be my pro debut, as you guys know. So I don't want to step on stage and people to say, oh, you can tell that guy's a new pro, like he's a new pro. I want to establish myself as a professional bodybuilder when I step on stage. So we'll see. Time will tell.
That's more than fair, man. You want to make an impact, obviously. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Better wait it out. So I'm curious. So you're out in where in the States exactly?
No, I'm in Alberta, Canada.
Edmonton, Alberta. For some reason, I thought you were in the States. I don't know why. How did the deal with Steele Supplements happen?
So I have a friendship with Paul Hutt, Jason Hutt's brother. And at the time, I was running with Golden Aesthetics, the clothing company. I believe it was 2017 when I signed with Steele. I was actually in the works of discussing a contract with another company, and the other company was a company that Jason was involved with in the past. So I had asked Paul, if he could get some insight from Jason and kind of let me know what it was like to work with this company. And Jason Hutt is someone that I've looked up to since I got into bodybuilding. I used to watch videos of him training on YouTube before I'd go work out when I was a little younger. And I can remember when he turned pro, and Jason, he was like supposed to be the next big thing, obviously, and then life happened for him. But that's a completely different topic. I've actually talked to him about that. But anyways, Paul had given Jason my number, and Jason had called me directly himself, which was also a pretty surreal thing for me when you're like gym or you're like bodybuilding heroes gives you a call. So Jason just gave me some insight on the company and told me what his own experience was. And then at the end of the conversation, he had asked me, he said, so now that I got you on the phone, what would your thoughts be with signing with Steele? And then he's like, if you're interested, I'll send you some product, try it out. Let me know what you think. If you're happy, then we'll talk more. So they sent me a big care package of pretty much all the product that they had at the time. Steele had actually just launched earlier that year. So they sent me a bunch of product, and I really liked all the products. So I gave him a call back and gave him my feedback. And then he showed a lot of urgency. So the other company that I had mentioned that I was in the works with, I was waiting to hear back from them, and it had been a couple of weeks. So I wasn't sure if maybe they had lost interest or what was going on. And Jason, he showed a lot of urgency with me. And he basically, when I told him that I was happy with the product and that I would love to sign with the team, he said, okay, let me sit down with my team. We'll come up with something that we can offer you, and then we'll get back to you. And then that same day, Jason called me back with an offer that I couldn't refuse. It was like unheard of as an amateur. So I took it, and I've been with them ever since.
That's huge, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty surreal because, like I said, that was 2017. So I was still competing as a classic amateur at the time. And they've been really, really good to me over the years. Their products are great. They're a little tricky to get into Canada. Our FDA is incredibly strict here. Like some of our BCAs have tryptophan in it, and that's a banned substance here in Canada.
Interesting. It's funny. What's that, sorry?
Tryptophan occurs in Turkey naturally.
I was actually going to say, like, you answered a question actually that somebody had. One of the local coaches here in Winnipeg actually was wanting to know about the Steele supplements and why some of them are banned, for example. But
yeah, it's just our FDA, man. It's really strict. Like, tryptophan is such an odd substance that Canada would deem banned or unsafe. It's actually correct. Sorry, it's not that it's unsafe. It's that they deem it a drug that only like a doctor should be able to prescribe. So that's why.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Um, all right, actually, so I'm curious. How did the friendship between you and Jenna happen? Me and her were kind of talking, and the way I met her actually was the morning of my show this past October. Some ridiculous stuff happened with like my tan. It had nothing to do with her, but it got super fucked up, and she actually talked me off the ledge. And I don't know, somewhere in conversation it came up. She's like, "Yeah, Cody had like a similar experience at one time, like kind of like that with the tan or something." And apparently, you guys have been friends ever since, something along those lines.
Yeah, that's Jenna, man. That you're like your situation sounds very similar to how I met Jenna. I met Jenna a few years ago now at a bodybuilding show. Um, I can't. I'm trying to think. I had some issues with my tan. Same thing. They weren't anything. It wasn't anything that she did, but she helped correct the problem. And you know how it is, man. Being backstage before you're about to go on, you put in months and months of hard work and everything that goes into a prep. So the last thing you want to be doing is stressing out, and you don't want to be beside yourself backstage or when you're getting your tan. So she helped bring me from here down to here, and then I was able to refocus. And that's Jenna. She's a people person, man. She really cares about the people that she works with. She cares about her company. She works very, very hard. I'm a proud friend, that's for sure.
No, she's definitely a gem, like one in a million. But for the
Really
people that
is,
don't know,
man.
that's Jenna from Bombshell Productions, by the way.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say,
Uh,
Humberto?
I was gonna say, from following you through the years, one thing that I've noticed that is very different from you when it comes to your approach to bodybuilding is your posing. You seem to be very passionate about the posing. You're very good, very artistic style of posing.
Thank
Do
you.
you have any background that gave you this skill or ability, whether it was some sort of choreography or dancing or any artistic background, or do you just have it naturally, like when you
No, I don't. I have a very heavy sports orientated background. I played baseball my whole life. I played a little bit of hockey. I played football throughout high school. But when it came to posing, man, all my posing was essentially self-taught. And how I did that is I just found bodybuilders that I admired or that I liked, whether it be their physique or their stylistic posing, and I would just study them on YouTube, and I would just watch and watch and watch and practice and watch and practice, and that's how I taught myself to pose.
Have you ever taught, whether it was a friend or a client or someone that you know, have you ever taught them how to pose? The reason I
Yeah, I
ask is,
do.
go
I
ahead.
do teach posing. Yes.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
reason I ask is because I do that as well myself. And I've had plenty of experience with posing clients. And I've noticed that I'm still trying to figure out whether that's something that you have innately, like ingrained in your brain from birth or whatever, or is it something that can perhaps be taught? Because for some people, I find that, you mentioned I watch it and I do it. That's not as easy for some people. A lot of people may watch it, try to do it, and it's just complete chaos and a disaster, right? And even with some clients, like something very simple as it may be, how you have your two ways of doing a front double bicep. You have your both feet straight on, basically equal,
Your
or you
classic
have
bodybuilder.
right, or you have your leg to the side, where that itself could look a little bit awkward if you don't have that hip mobility or ability to have that stance, right? So something as simple as that, I found that for some people, no matter how much you actually try to even position them or move them or explain it or whatever the case may be, it's just not something that comes to them naturally.
Naturally.
You know what I mean?
So you said a key word, mobility. A lot of people don't realize this, because you also asked if I had a background in dance or choreography or something. I have none. My rhythm is actually terrible. I'm a terrible dancer. So it's not that. But what I do have, which I think goes hand in hand with posing, is I have a very definitive or clear understanding of how my muscles work. I've always been able to, pop my lats. If teaching people posing, new competitors, that's something that they always struggle with, is being able to really get those lats out. I've always had a very good understanding of how my muscles contract and how they move. So that's, I think, goes hand in hand with my success in posing, because as I said, my rhythm is terrible. I'm a terrible dancer, so it's definitely doesn't come from a dance background, that's for sure.
And that's absolutely one thing that is it's really hard to teach someone if they don't have that connection with their lat. If they're a lot of people are you can position them however you want, and you can almost like manually try to make them bring out those lats. If they don't have that connection, it's really hard for them to actually get it right. And they may get it right with you or in the session, but then in order for them to do it on their own, it's very, very complicated.
Yeah, absolutely. And also to touch back on what you said about mobility, a lot of people don't understand just how important mobility is. So in order to hit some of these poses, you have to be flexible. If you're not stretching, if you don't incorporate stretching as a normal part of your routine, a lot of guys, they only do that stuff when they're in prep. Which obviously, that's great. You need to be doing that stuff when you're in prep. But if you want to truly become fully comfortable with your posing and make it look like it comes to you naturally, then you have to stay on that even in your off season when you are bigger, when it's even harder to hit those poses just because you are bigger. So flexibility, which obviously results in better mobility, is key.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that certain poses, you'll see some people attempt, whether it's floor poses or something similar, it really exposes your lack of mobility because they're very unstable, whether they are not really able to come fully down on that, front side pose with one leg extended. If you don't have that ankle mobility that is really supporting everything, you're really off balance, or you're just not even able to go low enough, and it kind of becomes a half fully standing, half floor type of pose, right?
Yeah.
And it looks forced, or it looks uncomfortable too.
Yes, and then obviously if it looks like that for everyone else, then it doesn't look very good. A lot of people think the bigger you are and the more muscle you have means that you're going to be less flexible, but that's not true at all. I mean, you look at guys like Antoine Valiant, for example. He does the splits now. You look at Flex Wheeler back in the day. Those guys are massive and they're doing the splits. So it's just about flexibility, man. Flexibility and mobility. And then obviously you need to learn and know how your muscles operate, how to contract them properly, and so on and so forth.
Is that something that you emphasize in the off season as well? Like how often would you stretch? How long?
So to be honest, throughout these quarantines, I've been slacking. But yes, absolutely. I'm back to my normal stretching routine, stretching and foam rolling. I'm very good at, I have like a team of people that work on my body in terms of like, I have a guy that does Graston work on me. I have a couple people for deep tissue and massage. I have a guy for chiro. I think keeping up on that kind of body maintenance is also very crucial as well, which is also in turn going to help you grow.
What would you say is the most beneficial treatment for you? Is it the grafting or the cupping, or what makes you feel, I guess, for lack of better words, brand new again after you get it done?
That's tough, man, because I think they're all equally important. I wouldn't necessarily say one is more important than the other. They all kind of go hand in hand. But if I were to, narrow it down to one, I would probably say deep tissue massage. Deep tissue massage, it helps release parts of your muscles that are, stuck, or you have muscle adhesions, and when you have muscle adhesions and stuff like that over time, that's going to decrease your blood flow through there. You want to break that down and really open up the muscle to increase the blood flow through there.
Would you say these precautions or these types of therapy become more and more important the higher level that you go in the sport?
Absolutely. I mean, that's not to say that they're not just as important at an amateur level. I mean, if anything, if there's serious competitors that want to make a career out of this, you should get in those habits at an early stage.
Yeah, the reason I ask this is because I think hearing it from a pro is going to make a greater impact than hearing it from an amateur. But a lot of people, I think, especially in the beginning stages, and I even think that perhaps some pros or at the pro qualifier level even, they don't take care of their bodies as perhaps they should, and that potentially has an impact on their performance at the gym, on their recovery. Then come the risk of injuries if everything
Absolutely.
are unstable.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, you just said it. That's if you don't keep up on stuff like that, you're going to be more injury prone. Absolutely.
So I'm curious, um, what was the best piece of advice over the years? I'm sure you received a lot of advice over the years, probably good and bad, that you've ever received when it comes to competing. And what was the worst, in your opinion?
Best advice and worst advice. I think the best advice, man, probably came from Ron Partlow, another Canadian. He used to be
Love
local
that
here.
guy.
Yeah, he used to be local here in Edmonton. He's in Coquitlam now in BC. But he always told me, man, he's always been very supportive of me, and he always told me just to enjoy the process. He said some of his best memories, or most of his best memories, were in his amateur days. You know, the people that he met, whether fellow competitors or promoters or whoever. He's established some great friendships, and that's something that he's always told me, and then that holds true to this day for me. I've met a lot of amazing people through competing and through my days as an amateur, and some of those friendships I still hold very near and dear to my heart now. I have a lot of great memories competing as an amateur, and yeah, just enjoy the process, man. And then worst advice, I don't know, bad advice.
We've all had at least one piece of it.
That's a tough one, man.
I know somebody told Humberto one time to go eat McDonald's right before, what was it? You stepped on stage or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, that was at no, it wasn't at that nationals that we're talking. My very first nationals was in 2013, and oh man, and this is where it's funny, because as younger up and coming or inexperienced competitors, you're very impressionable, right? So if someone can look amazing, if they come and give you terrible advice, even if you think that it could potentially be terrible advice, it makes you think, as well, this guy looks amazing, he must know what he's talking about, right? So yeah, this guy basically, what happened was, I was 2 pounds over my limit. So that year, my first nationals, this was in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and I was 2 pounds over. I was being coached by Fouad Abiad at the time. That was my very first time working with him. And I basically needed to drop the 2 pounds in, I think it was like a couple hours. So I was, that should be doable. So I went, and I already had my tan, mind you. So I needed to go into the sauna, fully clothed, freaking hoodie, the sweatpants and everything. I was there for about probably an hour between the steam room and the sauna. And I met a guy. He was a heavier guy. He looked really good. He was basically going on about how, like, clean carb ups are not really the best approach, and he said, no, you gotta just put your body, like, just load your body with junk food. So I'm like, Jesus Christ. And I'm new, I'm really inexperienced. I know my coach had me doing this, but then this guy is telling me this, and I'm kind of like, in my mind, I created a hybrid, right?
Yeah.
I ended up looking like absolute trash. Like, long story short, and lesson learned. But that's, I always kind of resort back to that when I whether I talk to my clients or whether I try to give people advice. Is like, if you hire a coach, you hire them, first of all, do your research properly. Don't just go by what your friend told you. And you can take that as some advice, but also do your research, see what this coach is all about, what their clients look like, what his perhaps personal competitive history is. As much information as you can gather to make a good informed decision, because once you make that decision, stick to it. You hired him for a reason. Trust the coach, and then just basically follow whatever they say. The only way you're going to know whether that approach worked or not, and to what degree, is if you actually adhere to it. I'm sure you've heard about many cases in which people are getting coached by someone, and they get advice from this person, and this person just confuses the hell out of them.
It never works. It never works. See, that's as bodybuilding, there's something to be said about bodybuilding in terms of, like, trial and error. A lot of what we do is trial and error. What works for you might not work for me, and vice versa. So that's where, like you said, when you hire a coach and you get to the last 4 weeks or 2 weeks or whatever, your mind starts playing tricks on you, and then you start seeking advice elsewhere. The problem with that is everything that this coach is telling you is calculated, and it has an intended purpose. The same thing with this coach, but if you've been following this plan and now you're getting ideas from this coach, and his approach might be completely different. You're basically just self-sabotaging yourself.
Absolutely. And I think the same goes with, even if you're not competing, even if you're just getting into the training, you know, someone that perhaps has no experience, they go and see what the biggest guy is doing. So one thing that they miss to understand is that this person has been doing this for a while. They're doing what works for them, for what, you know, their type of body, their level of muscularity, their level of, you know, how many years they've been training. They've learned a lot along the way. And then, you know, the newbie, from an outsider's perspective, they're just looking at the guys like, he is big, he must know what he's doing, I gotta do in order for me to get there, right? And it's, when in reality, couldn't be farther from the truth. Because yeah, perhaps you can take some pointers from this person, but if you're trying to do, you know, if you see Ronnie Coleman squatting 800 pounds, and then you go and try to do that double as heavy as you can, you're potentially going to injure yourself. It's probably not going to do anything for your body. So it just kind of tells you how unfortunately impressionable someone that is just getting started in the sport is, and the fact that there is a lot of information out there, but a lot of it is good. A lot of it is also either bad advice or not adequate for you specifically.
Yeah, maybe contradictory to what you're doing. And that's why what you said is so important. It's important to educate yourself on who you're going to hire, see if it's a well fit, make sure they're knowledgeable, and make sure that they're a good fit for you. Because, you know, just because I have success with one coach doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to have the same success with them. Now, to touch on like my relationship with Neil, I have 100% full faith and confidence in Neil, and that basically allows me to throw on autopilot. He thinks for me, I just do what he tells me, and it works.
So what was originally what drew you to go to Neil? Like when you did, you know, you were at a point where you're like, you know, I'm in need of another coach. What was your thought process? Or, you know, did you do any, you know, background research, or what was your thought process when it came to finding that one fit for you
Um,
specifically?
so before I started working with Neil, I was working with my best friend and training partner, Justin Huey, and I had great success with him. You know, I was knocking on the door for that pro status for a couple of years under Justin's guidance, and I learned a lot from Justin. And my fiance Nicole is actually currently being coached by Justin as well. So Justin was great. He was a great fit for me. We did really well together. And if it wasn't for the story that I'm about to tell you, I would still be working with Justin today. Because realistically, I would have eventually turned pro under Justin's guidance as well. But after I competed at the Arnold Classic in 2018, I met Flex Lewis back in 2015, I believe, and we've kept in close contact ever since then. Flex has always been very supportive of me and has reached out to me over my amateur years to wish me well before competing. But after the 2018 Arnold Classic, you know, Flex, I had placed 4th in my division, and Flex had just reached out to me and congratulated me on my placing. And then he just said, you know, I hope I'm not overstepping any boundaries, mate, but I think you could do great things with my coach, Neil. And then he said, let me know if you're interested and I'll put you in direct contact with him. So when one of your idols offers to set you up with his coach, it's not really something that you turn away. So obviously I was over the moon. I was super excited about that. And Flex put me in direct contact with Neil. And then, I mean, the rest is history. I started working with Neil. So I competed at the Arnolds. That would have been end of February, beginning of March of 2018. By April, Neil and I were full throttle together, prepping for the Vancouver Pro-Am 2018. And he said to me when we went into that show, he said, I think this will be win the show or not, I think this should be your last run at Classic. He explained to me, and this was something that was already on my mind at that point, just being that I had been the runner up to the pro card winner, you know, a few times at nationals, and then placed 4th there at the Arnolds. And he just said to me basically what I said to you guys earlier. He believed for me to reach my full potential that we would have to go the bodybuilding route. And I agreed. And that, you know, that's exciting to me, because although I loved Classic and Classic was very fun, It wasn't the same. I couldn't push the boundaries like I wanted to with training. I couldn't eat to grow. It was starting to almost become stale in a sense, if you will. So we did that last classic show together and then switched to bodybuilding. But it was Flex Lewis that put me in touch with Neil.
That just speaks to the importance of allowing yourself enough time to, especially if you're starting with a coach, allowing yourself enough time to actually get to know each other, for your coach to get to know how your body responds, for you to get to know the coach itself, the expectation, the way they do things. I think a lot of people make the mistake of going to a coach when it's crunch time, whether it's like 12 weeks out or even 16 weeks out. Like if you're, especially with such a goal as yours, switching from, graduating, so to speak, from classic to bodybuilding, that this takes time. It's not something
Absolutely.
that is going to be done in 3, 4, even 5 months. I mean, it took you, well, like you started working. How long was, because you started working with him, you said in about April. So yeah,
April, yeah.
you worked towards one last classic physique show. And which one was that?
So I would have stepped on stage July. We started
Right.
in April, and then I would have stepped on stage July. And then I placed second to Richie Chan. And then we did a full off season, and then came back and attacked bodybuilding. And obviously,
So that was an entire year that you basically trained for bodybuilding, right?
Absolutely, yes. As soon as I stepped on stage, after we got off stage in July, we started working towards bodybuilding immediately.
That's amazing.
Just the proof's in the pudding right there.
Yeah, that was so. It was a full year. So I started working. I got off stage July, and then I worked and worked until we came full circle around to July the following year in 2019. So that was a full year dedicated to growing.
Perfect.
And then to touch on that as well. So after I turned pro, I've been, as much as I've been able to with these lockdowns and whatnot, ever since I started competing in 2014, and I've done shows every year. I've never taken a full year off to grow. This is the first time I've ever taken a full year off to grow. As soon as all this COVID stuff kind of came into the picture, we decided early on that we weren't even going to worry about shows just because there was too many unknown variables. And obviously, as you both know, unknown variables suck for bodybuilding. So we decided that I would just take all of 2020 and dedicate it to growing. And then here we are now, still in the COVID pandemic.
Yeah, can you believe it? Like even over a year after, we're still with a lot of unknowns.
Yeah, it's a strange time to be alive, that's for sure. But I'm healthy, and that's all I can really ask for. Happy and healthy.
That's the biggest thing. Out of curiosity, so what are the restrictions like in Alberta? I know for a while it was said that gyms were open, but only for one-on-one training or something along those lines, right?
Yeah, so they've been pretty harsh here, man. Like for Christmas, for example, it was deemed illegal to have anyone over. It was household members only. I couldn't even have like my parents over for Christmas. So we were like lockdown. The only thing that was open here was big corp companies like Walmart, Costco. All small businesses were locked down. So it was, this last winter, man, was weird because our winters are very severe here too. It gets really cold. We have a lot of snow. So not only was I not able to go and train, but I essentially didn't leave my house unless it was to get groceries. And then sneaking over to Buddy's to use his basement equipment.
Yeah. And you have to. You got to do. I mean, you lose your mind if you don't for a while, right?
I was losing my mind, man. It was hard, and I think a lot of people can relate to that. I don't think I've ever really dealt with like seasonal depression or anything in my life, but I went through a period through this last lockdown that we had where I didn't feel like myself. It wasn't good, man. So my heart goes out to all the people that are dealing with that, and we're already dealing with stuff before this COVID happened. Like, I mean, it's been a hard year for everyone. That's for sure.
There's so many things. I mean, even here in Winnipeg, like we both know tons of people who struggle with mental health, and You know, it was almost like a carrot being dangled basically the first time they reopened certain things. And then when they closed them again, man, the impact the second time around was almost twice as bad.
Yeah, I mean, and like you said, with the carrot dangling out in front, like when they announced that we were moving into our next phase and our gyms could open, they slid that in the fine print that it was for one-on-one personal training only. So I mean, I don't train at a big corporate gym. I train at like a privately owned gym. It's more of like a bodybuilder gym, but those guys can't afford to open for one-on-one personal training. You know, the cost of just turning on the power, you know, turning the lights on and heating the building, you're not going to be able to cover that with one-on-one training. So those gyms obviously just stayed closed. The only ones that were really able to open were the, you know, big corporations like LA Fitness and World Health and Good Life.
Good lights, yeah. No, it's definitely wild to see, man. Especially with small businesses. I mean, I'm sure all three of us know a lot of people that own businesses, for example, and they're probably not big ones. So to see so many doors closed, especially over it, was, yeah, it was like very disheartening, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
it's sad, man. It's frustrating too. But I mean, we're all kind of along for the ride, whether we like it or not.
well, that's just
Yeah.
it. Uh,
Absolutely. So I would like to switch gears slightly here. The way I understand, your fiance, she competes as well, right?
Yeah, she competes in the figure division.
So I'd like to know a little bit about that dynamic. Have you ever prepped together for a show? What's it like to have someone like her that she fully understands how it works as a support system? Did you start competing right around the same time as you when you first started dating, or how did that work in the beginning?
So we met through the fitness industry essentially. Like I met her online basically. She had
Mhm.
at the time I was working with Dustin Cosman, who recently passed. May he rest in peace. But that's how I met Nicole, and she used to compete in the bikini division. But back then we didn't do preps together.
Mhm.
But fast forward to 2018, we both did the Vancouver Pro-Am, as well as 2019, the year I turned pro. We were also both prepping for that show. But I hit the jackpot with Nicole, man. She knows what it's about. She's very passionate about it too. She loves it. She's like me. She likes to be in prep. She craves that structure. I really thrive in that the structure that you need for bodybuilding contest prep. But she knows what it's about, man. She's no stranger to it. And not only that, she's no stranger to the hard work. Like she doesn't skip meals, she doesn't skip cardio sessions, she doesn't skip workouts. She's we basically vibe on the same wavelength, if you will. So I'm very very fortunate in that sense. You know, when we're in prepping, and you know how it is, there's days where I feel like I'm one foot in the grave and it's going to take all my energy to go, you know, get through my workout. On those days, she'll go get groceries or she'll prep food, and then vice versa. You know, she picks up this where I'm slacking, and vice versa, where we've figured out that couple dynamic that works really well, and we vibe really well together. So I'm very very fortunate, man. That doesn't just come naturally either. For all you couples listening, it takes work, man. It takes work. It takes a mutual respect and understanding of one another.
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic to me because, myself as a coach, I work with clients and you yourself, obviously, you know how important that support system is. So, there's situations in which, for example, only one person competes and the other one, in some cases, they try to understand to the best of their ability, but until they actually go through it themselves, that's when it really hits them. It's like, oh, that's why you were feeling like that. That's why you were, so tired or
Hmm.
irritable or whatever the case may be, right? And in some other cases, let's say one starts competing and the other one supports, but then eventually the other one, wants to compete as well. So, the question that I get sometimes is like, is that a good idea? Is that a bad idea? I don't know if you would agree. It just depends on the person. It depends on the
Yeah.
couple, and it depends on how, as you explain, how willing they are to actually make it work.
Yeah, so like you said, you mentioned from the competitor point of view, and then when someone when the significant other actually goes through it and they're like, oh shit, this is what you were dealing with. You kind of build that understanding. But I think it's also very important on the person who's competing to understand that, you know, you're subjecting yourself to this. No one's making you prep. No one's making you diet. No one's making you train. This is something that you chose. So because that is a choice that you made, you have to make a conscious effort to not use the people around you as a stress outlet or a punching bag. We tend to be the hardest on the people that we love the most because we feel most vulnerable with them. But you know, for me, if I want to be a successful IFBB pro and make a career of competing, a longevity, I plan to have longevity in this sport as well, then I also have to be very, very conscious of how I'm treating the people around me. And I think that's what a lot of people lose sight of sometimes. They think of it, and this is bodybuilding. I mean, let's be real, it's a very selfish sport. But you forget that you don't have to be an asshole to the people around you just because you're in prep, just because you're tired, just because you're suffering, just because you're sore. You know, this is something that we all choose to go through. No one's holding the gun to our heads, making us go through it.
Do you get, whether it's a fan or whether it's a friend, do you get, you know, when you're training, do you get interrupted fairly often sometimes when, you know, when you're in the middle of training? Or how do you deal with these situations in which, you know, you're irritable perhaps or very tired? What is an advice or train of thought that you would give people as to how to deal with these obstacles when it comes to what you're feeling and realizing, as you mentioned, that it's your choice ultimately, right?
Yeah, so you know, the human interaction part of this, I love meeting new people. Like I said before, I've met some pretty amazing people through the fitness industry, not even just competitors, people that are, I don't like to call them fans, more people that support me. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, without those people that support you, without fans of bodybuilding, there is no sport really, is there? But for the most part, people are pretty respectful to me. They know this is something I take very serious. It's my career. It's how I make a living. So people tend to be pretty mindful and respectful. You do get the odd person that comes up to you, and I've been tapped on the shoulder right before I'm about to drop down into the chute to squat. But people are pretty respectful for the most part, man. But I mean, the people that aren't, again, you have to make a strong conscious effort that they might not quite understand to the extent of what you're going through. So you just have to be mindful, man. A lot of that is just, you know, swallowing your pride and ego.
Yeah, I think that's very important to understand. I think you have to realize that, you know, there's people that they're very foreign to bodybuilding or even training in the beginning, right? So you have to empathize in that regard, because when someone comes and perhaps they're talking to you a little bit more than you would prefer, or they perhaps interrupt your workout, whether it's a question or a comment or whatever, it's the fact that they generally do not think or they do not realize what you actually, the level of focus and effort that you have to put yourself through in order to succeed, right? They're completely foreign to this. So I think once you realize that, you're a little bit more understanding and you're better prepared to actually deal with these situations as opposed to just lash out to them, right?
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? And I encourage people to approach me in the gym. I can't tell you how many times, you know, I've left the gym and someone's messaged me on Instagram. I just saw you in the gym, man. And I encourage those people to, you know, come up to me and say hello. Just make sure I'm not in the middle of a set.
Yeah, exactly. Make sure I don't have 500 pounds on my back, please.
Yeah. Because you know how it is. Sometimes I'm in prep, and those 4 weeks, especially, you know, I go in, I got the blinders up, and nothing really exists outside of what I'm trying to accomplish in that moment. So you got to keep in mind, sometimes when these people approach you, it takes balls to approach you. It's intimidating. You know, we're all bulked up and pumped crazy. We got veins everywhere. So you know, it takes a lot of guts to approach someone that you admire online. And I would hate for anyone to, you know, see me in real life, and then me not live up to the expectation of who I was online or who they thought I was online. You know, I always want to be, I'm me. I don't have different versions of myself.
And that's very important and rare, I think, these days, because you'll have a lot of people portray a certain personality online, and then you meet them, you're like, oh, there's completely different to the image that
Disappointing, man.
you know what I mean?
I've had people that I look up to in the bodybuilding industry who have, treated me completely different in person than how they, portray themselves online, and it sucks and it's disappointing. So that's not something that I ever want people to be disappointed with myself.
Okay,
That's
so
awesome
for
that
the,
you,
go
sorry.
ahead, Byron.
No, I was gonna say it's awesome that you share that though, because I feel um after you watch someone's stories so often or their posts and you follow them and you become a genuine supporter of theirs, right? Uh, it could definitely, be very disheartening, deflating if you meet somebody in person, for example, and they don't live up to that expectation. And it's funny that you mentioned Ron Parlow earlier, because when I met him when I went to Vancouver a couple years ago, it's exactly, he is literally the person that you see online, like the genuineness behind it, everything from the handshake to just the conversations to hearing the stories to making you feel welcome in the gym. It's
Yeah,
and I feel sorry, I was gonna
sorry,
say, I
go
just feel
ahead.
like that's what everybody looks up to,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
everyone living to that hype.
It's impossible not to be in an uplifting or a good mood around Ron. He's just one of those guys where, people, he's like a magnet for that. He kind of brings people together, or he's a people person, man. He's good at what he does, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
I
Humberto,
haven't
what were
had
you
the
gonna
pleasure. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting him in person, but I've been following him for a while, and it, it was such a motivating moment when he won his pro card, because he had been getting second consistently year after year after year, and that is just such a strong testament as to the not give up. That is the personification of do not give up, because even though that happened year after year, like even at 40 years old or whatever, he kept through with it and he got it. So I think a lot of people most people would actually have convinced themselves to not continue, because they would, whether it would be the train of thought of, oh, maybe the judges don't like me, or maybe I'm not cut out for this, I'm not good enough, whatever. That to me was a very special video when I saw it, because it was also very emotional, and that's what we live for. Like, that's the moment that we all think about when we're training, when we're posing, when we're envisioning that show day, right? It's such a it's got to be something else.
Yeah, and that's why, when you asked me what it was like to go through that, it's really hard to put into words, man, because like you just said, that's something that you envision, when you're training, when you're doing your cardio, when you're practicing your posing, that moment is something that you envision, but it's hard to put into words when you actually go through it. And Ron was like a hometown hero around Edmonton here. So I was actually at that show. That was nationals actually in Edmonton as well. That was 2015. So I was backstage at that show when that happened. So it was very exciting to be there that day. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
That's amazing,
So
man.
kind of just going back, just to kind of wrap up the topic of the support system. Um, do you have, for the couples that are perhaps right now prepping together or will be prepping together in the future, do you have any tips or advice, survival of the prep advice for them to actually apply in order for them to ensure that they go through the prep and their relationship does not take that much of a hit as it could potentially?
Yeah, just be patient with each other. Be patient and understanding, and put yourself in your significant other's shoes. I think that's something. That's where the problems start to happen, is when people think too selfishly. They don't. They're unable to remove themselves from their own perspective and place themselves in someone else's perspective. And perspective is everything. So if I'm only thinking selfishly, like, well, I'm this or I'm that or I'm tired or I'm sore, and I'm not taking your feelings into consideration, and to create some problems. So just patience and understanding and just a mutual respect for one another is so important.
I have one last question actually before we wrap things up, and it's just about longevity and life after bodybuilding. I know you're probably not thinking that far ahead. Maybe you are. I don't know. I'm curious. Let's say it's 10, 15 years from now. You're done. You're done competing. What does life look like after bodybuilding for you, Cody? Ideally.
Well, let's make one thing for certain here. Fitness will always be a part of my life. I'll be bodybuilding, if you will, long after my competitive days are done. I mean, you look at guys like Dorian Yates and you know, even Arnold at his age. Those guys are, you know, leading or living healthy lifestyles, and this comes full circle kind of to the topics that we've touched on throughout today's podcast here. Is bodybuilding should be a longevity sport, and that's why, you know, your massage work, that kind of maintenance upkeep on your body is so important. Supplementation, exercise, all of that is so important just for your overall health and well-being in general, not just as a bodybuilder, but just as a person. I think that's something that's sorry to kind of stray away here, but I think that's something that's heavily being missed right now in today's mainstream media, and with all these with all these health experts and whatnot. It's wild to me that these people aren't stressing the importance of physical exercise, you know, supplementation, cardio, things that improve your overall health and well-being. We're kind of focused on, you know, vaccines and whatnot, but I think with this corona pandemic, it's a clear indication that we have a health crisis in the world, if anything. So be kind to your body. You only get one. That's about it. That's all I can to finish that note off.
No, that's a great remark. I just have one last question. If you could train with anyone, past or present, who would it be? Anyone, bodybuilding, fitness personality, whatever.
In their prime or not, up to you.
That's so tough. I would love to get a session in with Lee Priest. Ever since I first got into bodybuilding, man, I'm a short guy like Lee. Lee's, you know, about an inch or two shorter than me. I'm about 5'6" 3/4", but I would love to get a session in with Lee. Lee is someone that is another guy that I've always looked up to. That's a physique that I've always wanted to emulate, if you will. I think he had a beautiful physique in his prime. So I would love to get, especially an arm workout. I'd love to get an arm workout.
Absolutely. And he's got quite a personality too. So that'll make
he does. I've actually been fortunate enough that I've met Lee in person. So
what was that like? Just out of curiosity.
He's another one of those guys that exactly what you see is what you get. He's black and white, no bullshit. He is who he is. And that's one of the reasons why I think he's great.
That's awesome. Actually, I want to expand on Humberto's question with one last one. So we covered Lee Priest for training, but if you can go out and let's say have drinks or dinner with one other person from the fitness world, who would that be?
I would love to go for dinner with Jay Cutler and pick his brain.
Always Jay. Everyone picks Jay.
What's that?
Everybody always picks Jay.
Jay is just, you know, Jay's Jay, man. Not only was he an incredible bodybuilder, but I mean, you just look at what he's done in terms of the business aspect of the fitness industry. I think everyone could benefit from taking a page out of his book. So I would love to pick his brain and see what's going on up there.
Especially tying back to you know, what Byron was asking regarding life after bodybuilding, right? I think he's a great example of
absolutely
what you can do with after your career, with your exposure, with your support base. You know, he's a very successful entrepreneur. So
yeah, he still looks great too. Like that guy looks healthy.
Absolutely.
All right, man. Well, I want to thank you for the time, Cody. Really appreciate you hopping on with us and just hanging out. It's been an absolute treat. Before we go, do you want to shout out your sponsor? Do you want to shout out Steele, Neil Yoda Hill, anybody?
Yeah, you know, shout out to everyone really that's been supporting me over the years. You know, I've been with Steele since 2017. They've been great to me. You know, a big shout out to my fiance Nicole. She's been by my side throughout since the beginning of my fitness journey or my bodybuilding career. Justin Huey's another one, someone that's very, very special to me. Jenna with Bombshell is another one of my sponsors. She's incredible. And then my coach, Neil Hill, man, the relationship that I've developed with Neil over the last few years has been great. And that's obviously a direct attribute as to my success and kind of where I'm headed with my career. So I'm really looking forward to making my pro debut. And shout out to you guys. Thank you for having me on. This was fun, boys. And maybe we can do this again once I get some pro experience under my belt.
We would love to. Absolutely.
That would be awesome, man, for sure.
Yeah, awesome, guys.
Well, thank you, Cody. We appreciate it, man. And we'll talk to you soon after you make your debut.
Until next time, you guys take care.
You too.
Yeah.
Bye.